Welcome back to aPlus Parents, everyone. And with me today is Megan. Megan, I hope I say your last name right. Megan Zechman. Is that
You
right?
are right. You are
How about
correct.
that? Okay, good. I'm getting good at this pronunciation stuff. It's awesome.
That's
So
right.
Megan is with Education Possible and is a veteran homeschool mom. Now, here's what's great about Megan. So she has two daughters, but here's what's great. She homeschooled them from kindergarten all the way through high school. They both graduated from high school, and now they're beyond high school and out in the world, and they're living their lives. Yet she's still so interested in what she's done and the passion she has for Education Possible that she's still working with that, and so it's just really great. We're going to find out more about Megan's young people as they're young adults and off in the world. But you think about 15 years of homeschooling altogether from the time that they go from kindergarten all the way through. So you really had a chance to see all of it happen at one time. And starting Education Possible in 2013, not only were you seeing what was working with young people with your own kids, but you were looking and gathering information from other families and answering questions people had about how to do what you were doing, which is interesting because oftentimes people ask us questions, and the questions they ask sometimes lead us to new discoveries that we hadn't even thought about. So it's like it's great. I love when our students ask us questions because they'll say something sometime. I'm like, oh yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. Well, that's really great. And here's what it looks like, right? So it's great. And then you picked on, for me, right? And I say picked on, but actually have an affinity for what sometimes people think are kind of the hard years, which is that those tween years, right? They're not quite teenagers, but they're not little kids anymore. They're in that middle school time. And sometimes it's like that can be tough because they're dealing with all kinds of stuff beyond school, and, with themselves and what's happening, and bodies are changing, and their brains are developing, and I always say it's like I think that's when kids learn how to roll their eyes. It's like there's that time they can finally now they know how to roll their eyes, and you're like, you're kind of like getting, they're practicing what it is to have an attitude, right? And I say practice because we often think, oh yeah, they just have attitude. I don't know they have an attitude, or they're just discovering what it is to practice what the attitude, how it works, right? So it's really great. So first of all, Megan, thanks for taking time out of your day to be here, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm so excited, and like you're really about making middle school fun, right? So when you
Yes.
look at that, and since you decided to start homeschooling from the time that your kids were in kindergarten, that's the first thing. It's like because oftentimes people kind of discover this. Like our family, we discovered it. Our kids were in third grade when we brought he just finished third grade when we brought my son home, and really it was more I discovered homeschooling as a curriculum developer, and for me, it was a way that people could find out about what I was doing. And I was like, wait a minute. So I was learning about homeschooling while I was, being somebody creating programs. And I was like, wait a minute, we got this for our own kids because it's so great. But you knew early on. So what was it? Why did you first start homeschooling?
We actually fell into it not in a similar way, but in a similar way that it wasn't in our mind. I really didn't think I would homeschool, but we moved to Florida, and my oldest was in kindergarten age, but she missed the cutoff. Just missed it. And she was fine when we lived up north, but once we moved down, and I realized she's already ready for school, and they're going to tell me that she's not, and I'm gonna have to do something for this whole year because she was to tell you how ready she was. So in Florida, one of the ways you can finish the year is you can get evaluated. And because I was not a teacher, I didn't come from that background. I felt I wanted someone else in our life to look at what we've done this past year and tell me, am I on the right track? So I had someone evaluate her, and she said she needs to start second grade next year. So not only would my daughter have they wanted to jump her an entire year, she would have had to wait a whole year in order to be there. So she was beyond ready. I know a lot of parents, oh, my kids are ready, and they shove them. And Abigail was really, really ready. And so we had heard about it a little bit. We knew a couple families when we used to live up in Ann Arbor, and great town, great schools. But we had these families that homeschooled, and we were like, why? The schools are so great. And so we kind of met them. So it was kind of in the back of our minds. And so I started researching, and I thought, okay, I'll do it for a little bit. And funny enough, I thought I'd put her back into middle school because I'm like, well, I don't want her to miss out on all the great middle school and high school stuff. And it just became a way of life for our family. Like, we are a homeschooling family, and it is it's who we are, and the whole family got involved, and we would travel all the time, and we would travel to learn. Every trip became educational, and we just never looked back. And I actually had an accident quite a number of years ago, and I ended up having to go into rehab because I couldn't walk. And so I was gone. We weren't expecting me to be gone, and we were like, "We'll put you in school." They were like 8 and 10, and they're like, "No, no." So my tribe kind of stepped up and helped, but even when they had the opportunity, they said, "Nope, we'll be good."
Wow, that's so funny. So my son, he came home. His first year, he was started as a fourth grader as a homeschooler, right? And when we told him that we were bringing him home, he cried,
Yeah.
right? And then, by the end of the year, we said, "Well, do you want to go back to school?" And he cried again. He says, "No." So it was just so funny. It was like, he cried both on the way in and back, but it's kind of the same
Yeah.
experience. Like, wow, and how great, and it says so much to the homeschooling community that here you are. And first of all, I'm hopeful that you recovered well from
Yeah.
the accident, right? And you're back. But so much about the homeschool community that the tribe comes together,
Hmm.
and you've got the community out there, you got your family out there, and you've got two young people that are on team homeschool, and they want to be doing that too. So it was really, really awesome. So, one thing is just that community that's there, but when you look and you can see the difference that it made for them, what would you say, like for you, like how did homeschooling really, really make a difference for your daughter's lives?
Oh, so much. My oldest is at UCF now, and she is a junior. She already has her associates, so she did direct connect to UCF, and she's actually in elementary education. But she doesn't want to be a teacher. She wants to teach kids about coins. She's been a numismatist for a number of years, and so one is she was able to really hone in on her passion early on because we put it into our homeschooling. My younger one is going to be a zookeeper. And so everything she wrote about was about animals. Everything my older daughter wrote about was about coins or famous women. So we were able to kind of adapt our homeschool into what their passions are. And they both actually have a name for themselves already. My oldest one has had a name for herself in the numismatic community for about 4 years now. She's on a board of directors. She has companies actually building of jobs for programs that for her to run. And all that came from homeschooling. But as she's taking these classes from these high end professors that are teaching all these teachers, they would ask, well, who read this or who did this? And Abigail's hand is always up. Well, aside from Abigail, and she's like, your mom just did such a great job because I just taught very hands on, very project based. So they really got to immerse themselves in what they're learning. And they both have a huge passion for learning, not just as a means to an end, but because they're really curious. And I know there'll be lifelong learners. And to be honest, that was one of my main goals. I said, you're going to have gaps. There are things you're not going to know. I don't know everything, but I want you to always be searching and always be learning and want to know that because then you can learn anything. And they really did have that. And I had a period where my youngest was in college. She did dual enrollment as well. And she had a professor that was snuffing out that love of learning. And I said, I worked my butt off to have you love learning. He's not snuffing it out in a semester. So we kind of worked around that and she's back thriving. But I think that was it. We just spent a lot of time exploring and they have so much confidence and so much interest in all different subjects. And they can speak to anybody, have conversations. My youngest one is actually on a semester at sea. She's been gone for 3 months. She has one more month to go. She's 10 countries. She's just a citizen of the world and out there talking and exploring. And she would not have done that because she was so shy. She would have just been overwhelmed by public school. And so having her kind of grow on her own and blossom when she was ready just really made a big difference.
Wow. And so for anybody out there that's like the idea of, are you going to be able to manage your social life and be socialized, right? It's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
such
that's
a
kind of
joke.
okay. Now there's a word you used, and So I'm going to go ahead and throw myself out there because I'm not fully sure what that means, and I'm going to take a guess. Some of our listeners don't know what that means. And you, so in the coin business,
Uh,
what was that? What's that word?
Numismatist.
Numismatist. Okay, what does that mean?
It's a coin collector.
Okay. Oh, cool. Okay, so are these like collecting coins? Are these like rare coins, like older coins, current coins, or just any kind of coins?
She's actually changed. As her part of the hobby, she started with um, world coins, then she went to Roman coins because she just loved the history part of it. Then she went to copper, but then realized because of where we live in Florida, they were starting to tarnish. So she looks for right now, she's collecting error coins. So when they've made a mistake when they're stamping
Right.
them through the
Okay.
die process, she collects those. She's collecting Roman provincials, which I don't fully understand what that is, and she collects red books. So every single year, this company puts out these red books, and every coin that's in circulation or has been that's being collected is in there and has kind of a price. And so she has an entire huge bookcase full of all these red books.
Wow, that's very cool.
Yeah.
It's funny now. People say coins, right? And often now, sometimes people will hear the word coin and they're thinking crypto and
Right.
the cryptocurrency world, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, I haven't heard that other word before, so okay. But I was thinking it
Yeah.
was like coin. So
Yes.
that's so cool. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, how much fun! And really just brilliant on her part to go into the world where she's studying education and learning about best practices that they have to offer, but she can take those into a career that is what she wants to do. So that's really awesome. Really, really awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so here you are, and you're kind of cruising along. You're seeing that your girls are flourishing. They're really getting it, right? And then Education Possible. So why did you start Education Possible?
So, kind of exactly what you're saying. Our kids were just doing something very different. We were homeschooling differently. I was realizing is you'd kind of hang out with some friends and, oh, let's bring our curriculum together. And no one had ever heard of anything that I would be using at the time. Or I would kind of build my own program or design my own lesson plans. And they were just kind of fascinated. We use Disney a lot because we live at Universal. My husband actually used to work there. That's why we moved here. So we would do geography at Epcot, and we would do Animal Kingdom for our animal studies for science. And we did actually a lot of physics with the different rides at the parks. And so people were just always wondering, well, what are you doing? And so I realized that other families could probably benefit. And then I started seeing as time went on that more and more people were doing school at home. And that's not, I don't, I know that works for many families. That's just not what I believe in. That's not how we've homeschooled our kids. And everybody I know who does a project base, it really works very well for their students. And a lot of people weren't talking about that. And so I really wanted to do that. And so we wanted to kind of share, especially for middle school and high school, because everybody wanted to do something different for middle school and high school. And I wasn't changing a lot of things. I was just making them a little bit more involved. And I felt that that was a good kind of space to be in that not a lot of people were talking about. And I was really excited about.
Wow. That's okay. It's very cool. So I know listeners right now, they're like, okay, wait a minute, Education Possible. So it's educationimpossible.com, and we'll have all the links in the show notes so everybody will be able to get to it. But when parents get to the site, what should they expect? Like what can they find on the site?
So I focus very heavily on the subjects that make it easy to make homeschooling fun middle school. I focus a lot on geography. I focus a lot on science, a lot of life skills, a lot of just tips on homeschooling middle schoolers. So a lot of hands-on projects, curriculum that's a little bit outside of the box that maybe not everybody talks about. I'm not big on lecture type of curriculum, but I'm really big on literature based, hands on. So getting moms to do those science experiments. I also talk a lot about holidays and seasons and games, ways to kind of connect as a family of older kids, because it can be a little challenging because stuff out there is a lot for younger kids, or they kind of write off, my kids don't want to spend time with me. And that's not always true. And then I have a lot of great printables that kind of to make life a little bit easier. I do a lot of fun scavenger hunts. I love my atlas scavenger hunts to get kids used to using an atlas in geography class or learning how to use latitude and longitude, a lot of science experiments, backpack scavenger hunts, nature walk, games, things like that. So anything to really help parents make middle school the great years and have some fun with your kids. That doesn't take a ton of time because that's the other thing. They get worried. Well, I'm already busy, but it's not as involved as you think.
Right. Oh, well, that's really great. Yeah. And I know oftentimes people kind of get, especially if they've started and they've been homeschooling for a few years. And I think there's that time, you may have seen this yourself, that you're homeschooling, you're doing it for the long haul. Right.
Yeah.
And, there's time we often talk about young people, and young people are like, oh, I don't want to, or they're like, I want to go back to school. They have these things. Right. But oftentimes parents kind of get to that same place and they're like, really again today?
I
I don't
know.
really want to either, right? I'm tired. But it's interesting because I think the middle school years would be those years when oftentimes parents get to that kind of fatigued, kind of worn out, just kind of that burnout stage, right? And what a great time to take a step back and start having fun,
Yeah.
and having
Yeah.
school be fun. And we know high school's coming, and all of your algebra and geometry. I talk from the math world, of course, right? But
Yep.
you've got all those like college prep kind of things that you're kind of getting ready for, and all those things. But and then all the other academics that go with that. So for parents that are kind of they get to that point where they're kind of getting tired, right? And sometimes I think maybe they're kind of in that space where it's like, well, I have to keep doing what I've been doing. So do you notice like for parents, like oftentimes they kind of get stuck there, right? And
They
it could
do.
be like, what would you recommend for them if they're at that place and they're like, wait, middle school could be different, right? So what like when you approach middle school, you approach it very, very differently. So, what do you notice from parents that contact you and things that they feel like, "Oh, I think I'm doing something wrong here. Can you help me out?" What do they say?
I think one of the biggest things is you have to be willing to break up with your curriculum. Just because you've used something forever doesn't mean you have to keep doing it. And it doesn't mean you can't go back to it. Middle school, I find one of the biggest mistakes that parents make is they treat middle school like a mini high school. That's not what it's supposed to be. And that's not what it needs to be. It is the perfect time. So think about it. For a lot of us moms, we do history. Let's just take, for example, we do history chronologically. Well, by middle school, you've already gone through it how many times? And you're going to go through it again once you hit high school because they have to have certain credits in order to graduate for different states. And so now's the time to do something really different. So instead of studying, all right, we're going to study Roman or we're going to study Greek, study a different culture and kind of look through that through a history lens, but also a geography lens. Or look at inventions and inventors throughout history and also science. So combining, but then just taking a unique spin on it. And so you're not doing things exactly the same way. And I find that people will say, oh, we love doing lap books when they were younger, but we can't do it when they're older. Well, switch to notebooking. It's similar, but you just don't have the sit down and create the folds, but you're still letting them be creative in a different way. So I find that they throw away everything that was working and move into this big structured thing that no one wants at this point. Your kids still need to get up and be moving and active and taking breaks and running outside. They cannot sit for hours on end. Their brains just aren't designed, their bodies and brains are not designed for that. They can't sit through lecture upon lecture upon lecture. They need all of these hands on, these breaks, these brain breaks. And so you have to build things like that in, and so you can keep some of the same things you were doing. You don't have to toss them away because you're too young. Just adapt them a little bit. So you could do some of the same science experiments. I have some on my site that elementary school kids are doing it, but I add in some more in depth questions to really make them think because they're starting to build that processing in their brains. And so they have to take it a step further. And they love doing that because then they can kind of do cause and effect and well they can kind of make these hypotheses. But I think if we do the one without the other or just make it so hard that it's like high school, you're just overwhelming them. So you kind of take a little bit from, way back, and maybe not necessarily the same curriculum, but the style. Again, you take the games, you take the plays, you take the experiments, and you bring those into middle school, but expect a little bit more from them, but not like they're a senior. I think we forget because a lot of it, we've all graduated from high school. Many of us have graduated from college. What is expected of an 11-year-old? What is expected of a 9-year-old? What does that paper look like? What does that understanding look like? And I think we jump too far for too many of them, or we keep them too little and we miss that kind of middle. So I
Mm.
think that's one of the biggest mistakes parents make.
It's so great as you're saying that because it's making me think. It's like, we know what it looks like when they're first getting started,
Yeah.
and we know what it looks like when they're done. But it is that middle part. Like, well, what does that look like? And you pointed to something earlier about middle school not being like a get ready for high school kind of thing.
Right.
And at the same time, there would be things that you would
Mhm.
say that kids need to do to prepare for high school. What are some things? Maybe you have like a top 5 list of things that kids could do to get ready as they're in middle school to prepare for high school. What should they be looking at?
You are exactly right. I don't want them to think that they don't need to be getting them ready. It just doesn't have to be high school in middle school. But there are some things that you can do. Absolutely. Number one is start working independently. It is their education. I made that very clear to my children. I have a bachelor's degree. I already went through school. This is your school. And if I care more about it than you do, then I'm not doing my job. So you have to start caring and you have to start taking responsibility. So they had to do their lessons. I didn't care when they got the lessons done. So we would sit down and we would make a plan for the week. We would look at our family calendar. We would look at what they had for friends or whether they had co op. What could they get done? And then they were responsible for getting it done. And then they had to suffer consequences, unfortunately, if they didn't get their work done. But it became independent, became independent learners, which is crucial. And now's the time because the stakes are lower in middle school than they are in high school and college. So they need to take an online class. Online learning is huge in our world now. My daughter in college right now, half of her coursework is online. And if I hadn't started her in middle school to get her used to the process, to get her used to the tech, to get her used to taking classes from someone other than me, I would have done her a disservice. So getting them used to that through, and again, the stakes are lower. You could take a fun online class and it's just get them used to the process. And then they could take some more in high school and then they'll be ready, once they hit college. They need to read, they need to continue reading, and they need to write more. Now, I'm not talking about 5-paragraph essays. You don't need to do dozens and dozens and dozens. But when you do ask them to write those, write them about something they're passionate about. Like I said, mine wrote about animals, wrote about coins, wrote about famous women. You don't have to use necessarily what the curriculum will write this paper on this person if they're not feeling it. If you're losing them, have them write a product description, have them write a cause and effect paper, have them do notebooking. Just think outside the box when writing. It doesn't have to be the standard, but you're getting them used to the process of putting their thoughts down on paper because they have to crystallize them in their mind. They have to filter through everything and decide, what am I going to write down? And that's really important. Get them into as many genres of books, whether it's audiobooks, reading aloud, having them read one on one, having them read to a younger brother or sister, just getting that process because there's a lot of reading involved with the higher grades. So they need to be comfortable with that and okay with reading quickly. They have to kind of get that speed up. Exploring interests. Now is the time for them to really explore. What are you interested in? Do you like art? Do you like science? Do you like music? Mine was into coins. She was this really weird kid that like no one around us liked coins and she loved them because of the history. So I took her to every coin show I could. I volunteered so that she could be more involved. We found coin camps for her to go to. We found online stuff. For our zookeeper, we found her a zoo that she could volunteer at. We read all kinds of zoo books. She knows all about all these animals. We went to Animal Kingdom all the time. So now's the time because not only may that set up a career for them and they can be laying the groundwork now, but it will also set you up for electives and it just makes them gives them outlets. It makes them a better student. But I think when we make middle school about high school, we get so caught up in the check boxes and the SATs and what's going to matter and what's going to matter that we boil it down to math and science and maybe science or maybe language arts. And those are so important, but so is geography and so is art and so is all this other stuff that our kids need this big world in their school, and we need to make sure we're broadening it, not shrinking it down yet, because there's time for that, but now's not it. And then they need to learn study skills. I did not do this as well as I should have with my kids. Luckily, I taught them how to learn, and they took we they were not able to take your course. I took your course actually, the study skills course, because they're already moved on. But I wish I had that. They would have taken that in a heartbeat because it's the type of program that I used in my homeschooling. That's exactly what I looked for. I looked for something that was relevant. I never wanted to waste their time. I wanted real world implications for them because I never wanted them to learn just for learning's sake. I wanted them to be able to connect to stuff. And your program with the study skills really does that. And it was all stuff that I had heard my oldest talk about. Yeah, I needed to learn how to do this. And I needed, now we did do some study skills, but there's so many out there that they could really be learning. So pick up some note taking, have them work on picking up what you're saying in a lecture and getting them down in notes, having them build some like a study program, having them set a schedule, all those things. There's different things that you don't have to teach them all of them, but they have to start the process of being a good student and being able to take information, figure out what's important, and getting it down so they can remember that. So those are the 5 things I think that if you get them set up with that, they're good to go because they're going to learn so much more in high school anyway.
Absolutely. Oh, man, it's so great. And you're pointing to everything that's happening for them, but because they're discovering, and what a great time in the middle school years, right? Like really discovering, like they're looking at, having to, how, when do you, it's all of a sudden it's like, we want them to be independent. Okay. So now you're independent. Okay. But they have to discover what that looks like for themselves. And the middle school years are a great time to practice that. And it's so great. You were talking about online classes. I started putting everything online, and this was, oh, gosh, see, I started in 2010, right? And we started getting things online in 2012. It's the first year that we moved things to an online format. And people they thought it was kind of weird at the time, and it's funny. And then we started doing these live classes, and people thought that was weird too. And I kept thinking, yeah, but I think that this is where we're headed, And for me, I couldn't get to all these places. I couldn't get to, if I was in Florida and I wanted to have a student in Georgia, I wasn't going to drive to Georgia. And, at the time it was just, that wasn't going to happen. But for me, the online thing as a person doing curriculum about online was that it was that I had somebody had told me about the Tesla car. And this is it's kind of like I kind of modeled this, right? Because they said when Tesla does an update to the car, it just updates the car and everybody gets the update all at the same time, if it's some kind of software thing, right? And I thought about that and I thought, wow, instead of having to go in and write a bunch of books and reprint all the books and do everything again, what if we could just have it so that we want to update something and everybody gets it all at once, right? Or we're adding something cool and new. And so it's like, it's just funny, but it's like, and now I think people have realized, well, of course, this is so much easier, right? And it just makes things so much quicker and faster for people to get information. So this is great. The reading, looking at their interests, right? I was writing things down as you were going through the list, right? And then the study skills piece, which is really awesome. We don't learn study skills. It's not like there's not a class in study skills. It's either we happen to, someone showed it to us or we discovered it on our own, but not like something where you're purposely actually developing that set of skills. And middle school, what a great time to do that. So super cool. So now so Education Possible is really there for, parents to discover kind of getting from that, that tween to teen time, right? So that they
Yeah.
can come on site there. And when they come on the site, so they can probably have access to you. And you have some things on there on your site. So some things that if somebody's online and they wanted to pick up something, what do you have on there for people if they come to your site?
So I do have a bunch of printable products. So I have, like I said, my scavenger hunts. I have these history kind of notebooking programs. I have science experiments. I have fun family games. And I'm constantly adding to those as well. I just want things to be easy so you can just print them off and go, because some kids do really well with that. And then I'm writing all the time. So I'm constantly sharing hands on activities, different curriculum that either we've used. I don't talk about anything on my site that we didn't use or I would not use in my homeschool, because like I said, I've done this for so many years. I know exactly what I would have used with my kids. Oh, that would have been great with my kids. And so I talk about different things like that on there as well. And just all the tips and tricks to help parents navigate these years, to let them know they're not alone and it does not have to be overwhelming. These can be the best years to homeschool. They really, really can.
Mhm.
And it builds such a connection with your kids when you can keep them, because I think we get so scared of these older years that, oh my gosh, I'm going to mess up and they're never going to get into college. They're never going to finish high school. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do about calculus? Well, you don't need to worry about calculus right now. And there's other teachers out there. You don't have to be the only teacher in your kid's life. You don't have to be the only voice in your kid's life. And I think that's what I want them to understand, that while it's all on you, it's not all on you, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're
Yep.
responsible, but you don't have to take it all on your own. And I'm there to help remind that, okay, bring it back a little. Okay, do a little bit more and just inspire people, bring out the experiments. Yes, your kitchen might get a little messy, but you know what? That sparkle in their eye, you never know what that's going to ignite in their imagination and what they're going to want to do beyond that. But I think we get so, oh, I can't. Then find someone who did. I was the one in our co op. None of the moms wanted to do the icky stuff. I did. I loved science. I thought it was great. I'm like, yeah, let's dissect this. Let's do this. I don't care. Let's build a volcano. So I taught that and they taught other things. So I just want them to know that you're not alone. And while, like you said, I can't be everywhere, but I'm here and I'm always willing to help. And I try to share as many resources as possible to make middle school great, that's not overwhelming for
Oh,
parents.
I love it. That's awesome. Okay, for people listening today, it's educationpossible.com, and we'll have all of the social media links up there for Megan, so you can get in touch with her and find out what she's up to and kind of keep up with what's going on. And if you don't have the middle school years yet, and you've got young people getting ready for middle school, this is so you can kind of see where you're headed.
That's
Or
right.
if you're in the high school years and you're just looking back to see, is there something, sometimes you want to take a step back and kind of have a little bit, how do we throw some fun in there, kind of get those high schoolers that kind of need a little break from all that. So this is a great time to do that too. Megan, thanks again for making your day work to be here. Super fun to talk to you. And as you keep writing and stuff, we should come back together, do this again, kind of see great things that you got going on. That would be awesome. All right, great, great. Well, everyone tuning in today, thanks for tuning in to A Plus Parents, and we'll see you next time. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.